Good morning. After all that aggression in the last chapter, isn't it great? We're going to start talking about the nice, touchy-feely good stuff. We're going to talk about attraction and intimacy. First thing we're going to talk about is factors that lead to attraction and perhaps friendship. We'll take that love and friendship and attraction one step further in the second part and talk about love and marriage. And then, of course, unfortunately, relationships build and relationships end. So we'll go with that, and we'll start with number one. All human beings have a fundamental need. Think Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Have a fundamental need for belonging. Okay? And so we find that ostracism is the act of pushing out or denying the need to belong. And we find that ostracism is pain in the brain. You can take a look at the image under my head. Look at that. Social ostracism evokes a brain response similar to that triggered by physical pain. All right? We find that, look at that, in all but 2 of 15 school shootings, assailants suffered ostracism, rejection, bullying. Okay? So need to belong is powerful. So turns out proximity is a pretty darn big portion of who we are attracted to. It's in many ways we make reference to this phrase called functional distance, and so it's not geographical distance necessarily. It's not necessarily being closest to each other, but it's how often you cross paths with another person. So the more often you cross paths, the more likely you are to become attracted to each other as friends or otherwise. We find that it's pretty powerful anticipatory liking. So if you expect that someone will be pleasant and compatible, all of a sudden very, very much increases the chances of building a rewarding friendship. Okay? And then mere exposure here. We've seen mere exposure. It's this, remember basically the cognitive idea, the mere exposure heuristic, or recognition heuristic, my bad. The recognition heuristic was the idea that we're just attracted to things that we recognize more. So the more we're exposed to something, the more we are attracted to it. It works with, faces, Chinese-like characters, words in Turkish. So it just doesn't matter what it is. The more often you see something, the more it becomes pleasurable or pleasant, which explains the functional distance idea. All right. Well, physical attractiveness around the world has some commonalities and has some differences. See, all 5 of these ladies are considered to be very highly attractive in their culture, and clearly there's a lot of differences here. But if you pull out your ruler and figure this out, I don't remember what they are, but there's some common universal features. And it's like hip to waist ratio, number 1, right? What is the ratio of the waist size to the hip size? What is and then facial characteristics? It's like the distance from nose to ear. I don't know what they are, but they're pretty solid in all of these women, no matter how much they might look different. Women's attractiveness predicts how often they date, but a man's attractiveness doesn't really do that so much, okay? Women promote their attractiveness, and I talked about this earlier on dating websites. Women tend to promote attractiveness when seeking a date, but they look for men of higher status, okay? So we find that people often deny, I would never be so shallow as to choose a dating partner based on something so superficial, right? And so look at this. They asked women, being completely honest with yourself, are you attracted more to bodies or brains? And women reported more highly they were attracted to brains, and men were more attracted to bodies, though I think this just reveals that women are bigger liars than men. I am not sure, okay? Because we all know the truth to that answer, okay? All right. One of the things that is absolutely universal is clear complexion. So people are attracted to healthy mates, and healthy mates, obviously, because if you mate with somebody that is healthy, then your offspring is more likely to be healthy, etc. And skin is a clear, direct, visible aspect of health. Okay? So clearly the cosmetic industry have really, really honed in on this, okay? And it's an amazing thing how strong the aversive reaction can be to skin conditions. Even young infants show the same aversive reaction even before they've had a chance for social learning. Another universal form, characteristic of attraction is bilateral symmetry. Our entire body is supposed to be cut right down the middle, mirror image left and right, and the more symmetrical the body is across the left and the right is an indicator of, again, health. Okay, genetic mutations, pathogens, stressors in the womb can lead to this asymmetrical development. So asymmetrical features are considered to be less attractive. We're also drawn to average faces. Okay, so people perceive attractive faces to be an average proportion, average features. And so what happens is that research has been done where they took pictures, photos, and what they did was they would combine them together in some, Photoshop funky way. And it turned out that if you take a series of photos and you put them together to make a combined face, the combined face will be more attractive than 95% of all the photos that make it up. So it's not 100%, but it's pretty darn strong that it's the average one. And in fact, in one study, they made average Caucasian faces, average Asian faces, and then even after making average Caucasian and average Asian, then they stuck those together to make an average Eurasian. And so what we found was that these finalized results, the finalized Eurasian were considered to be the most attractive of all. So in theory, the most attractive face in the world would be one that is a composite of every single human being on the planet, okay, in some kind of a perfect world. So when it comes to facial features, we're attracted to the average, but when it comes to other bodily features, we're attracted to the extremes, okay? In fact, what we're attracted to, kind of to sum it up, is that thing that is most difficult to obtain. And so we find that across time, across cultures, the most attractive body varies an awful lot. In 1951, this is really before, how do I put it now gently, processed corn syrup invaded our food industry. So before that happened, there was an influential book, Patterns of Sexuality, and they said, as a rule, heavier women are universally found to be more attractive. But what we found is with the advent of processed corn syrup, it's no longer true that larger... See, when food is difficult to acquire, which it has been throughout almost all of human history, heavy is difficult to acquire, and therefore the body form, which was difficult to acquire, was the more attractive one. Nowadays, with processed corn syrup everywhere, you can't turn around and not hit this stuff, finds that less heavy bodies are more difficult to acquire and therefore become more attractive. And by the way, this truth about heavier actually held up until the mid-'80s, and then all of a sudden what happened was the world got introduced to cable news or cable television and Western media, and as soon as they got exposed to Western media, this universal conclusion here just flipped on its head. So we find on the top images that represent what typically had traditionally been more attractive. On the bottom, we find those that are perhaps, well, okay, those are even old, but you get the idea. I like this, the matching phenomenon. That is, men and women tend to match on attractiveness. They tend to come together in similar ways. And so here's Dilbert. I love this one. Frankly, I'm insulted that you asked me out. It means you think we're about the same level of attractiveness. You'd better have a heck of a sexy car, right? And here's Dilbert. It's electric. I like it. And so the idea is, if one is more attractive than the other, the less attractive one can compensate with something else. Like Hugh Hefner, the publisher of Playboy with all of his millions and his Playboy mansion. He was not an attractive man, but boy, he ended up with some pretty me, woohoo, you know what I mean, right? So clearly it was a compensation kind of a thing. So leading into this, this is problematic. The physical attractiveness stereotype. It's this belief that physically attractive people will also contain or possess other socially desirable traits. What is beautiful is good, something like that. And so what happened was they did a whole bunch of Senate candidates, and they laid them out, and people took da 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 da, and people picked the more attractive candidate in all of these Senate elections. And guess what? The more attractive candidate was in fact the one that won the elections over and over and over. Okay? So we like them, we assume they're somehow better. And we of course remember the self-fulfilling prophecy. If you expect somebody is going to be good, you treat them good, they become good, then that fulfills the prophecy and further confirms your belief that the next time you find somebody that's physically attractive, that they will also be good. Okay, so it's a self-fulfilling, self-perpetuating game. All right, socially perpetuating. As we said, even 3-month-olds that haven't even been influenced by television yet, well, maybe they are now in this day and age. I don't know. They've probably been YouTubing for 2 months already. But 3-month-olds are also prefer to look at an attractive face. So whatever we as adults say, oh, that's attractive, is the same thing that 3-month-olds prefer to look at, which is just nuts. Okay. Here is Shonda Rhimes, the television producer, and I like some of these lines. Or television writer? She's a writer, producer. I don't know. So apparently from the left photo to the right photo, she lost a bunch of weight. And so women I barely knew gushed. I mean, gushed like I was holding a new baby gushed. Only there was no new baby. It was just me in a dress with makeup and my hair done. And yes, yeah, never give it the time of the day. And it was just like, okay. And it made all the difference in the world. Once she spruced herself up and lost a little bit of weight there, and all of a sudden, boom, she was more attractive. Interesting. So yeah, so we can talk about universal rules of attractiveness, but yet there's a lot of culturally based attractiveness as well. And again, like we said, where food is scarce, plumpness is attractive, but when food is plentiful, it's skinniness. And we have seen the stretched necks and oops, where were they? Anyway, they're up there somewhere. The stretched necks and the lip diskings and the filed off teeth and painted. Okay, and so like here, for example, is the old Japanese foot binding. Oh, the smaller the foot, the more attractive. Oh, I'm sorry, ladies, that's crazy. All right, similarity. It turns out that we like people. We love ourselves, especially we as Americans. We Americans love ourselves, and therefore we love people similar to us. Okay, so we tend to find people similar to us and are attracted to people similar to us. And we find that dissimilarity is even powerful in terms of I don't know if that's a word, disattraction. So dissimilarity breeds dislike in an even stronger fashion. So as a rule, spouses and roommates not only are more common to begin with, but they become more similar with time, right? And group polarization helps to explain that. Well, so we have this notion of birds of a feather flock together, and we're attracted to those similar to ourselves. But what about the old adage, opposites attract, right? So the belief, complementarity, the belief that two people will complete each other. I'm the chocolate, you're the peanut butter. Let's be her Reese's peanut butter cup. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, there might be some complementarity as a relationship progresses, and like one spouse is good at one thing, like taking out the garbage, and another spouse is good at other things, like cooking, because she won't eat my cooking. And so we complement each other because, we share. Okay. But anyway, at almost all stages, it's birds of a feather flock together. I like this one, ingratiation, this notion of using strategies like flattery to gain favor. So Marlene Dietrich, she was a famed, very, very famous, beautiful woman in the, I think it was the 40s. And anyway, the average man is more interested in a woman who is interested in him than he is in a man with beautiful legs. Wow. I still remember there was an old Eddie Murphy. Remember Eddie Murphy used to be a stand-up comic many years ago, and he had a routine where he was talking about how you would find these attractive men and unattractive women walking down the street, and it was like, how did that happen? And he would just like cater to his ego. All right, you just flatter that dude, and there you go. Anyway, Eddie Murphy said it a lot more funny than I did, so just pretend it was funny. Okay. And so people that have low self-esteem, this ingratiation works particularly well. Okay. And I can guarantee you that every good salesman in the world knows this trick. Okay. But constant flattery loses its impact because who's going to believe that much stuff, right? And then the last one I got to talk about here is this notion of the reward theory of attraction. Okay? The theory that we like those whose behavior is rewarding to us. And so in this study, look at this. Which one was it? It's the woman, person A. Okay. So after interacting with a friendly experimenter, people preferred someone who looked like her. Oh, I see. They're very tiny letters. You can read that. So the woman on the left was the experimenter. She was very flattering, friendly, etc. And then later on, they were asked, which of these two do you like more? And they liked the woman that was resembling the one that had been friendly. And so it's not just that we like people that are friendly and provide rewards to us. We like people that resemble those that. Remember generalization if you ever took your learning class. But it's, yes, the principle of generalization, operant conditioning, generalize the operant response, etc. All right, so we'll stop there. We'll take it one step further the next time and go beyond something resembling friendship and initial attraction and talk about full-blown relationships.